Some mornings are better than others. Some mornings, some coffee is needed. Some mornings, a lot of coffee is needed.
The
So,
best part of waking up is Audible in your cup.
Sigmund Bloom in your cup.
That's right.
Okay. All right. Here we go. In three, two, one. The fantasy playoffs are almost here, and you need help. We need help. We're here for you. We're all here for each other. It's time for the Week 14 Waiver Wire show here on the Audible, and it's time for Dr. Jene Bramel to tell us about those injured QBs here in Week 14.
That was a fun game to watch. Number of quarterbacks we'll have to watch this week. Aaron Rodgers should not be among them. Didn't have surgery on his toe fracture through the bye week, is expected to play. Hopefully he's a little bit closer to getting through a game without any difficulties, but he's been pretty productive in a couple of games since the toe fracture in week 10. So probable, be very surprised if he practices much this week, maybe get in a little bit of practice time, but should be able to go. Jalen Hurts has a bye week to recover from an ankle sprain, was not able to play last week, but Nick Sirianni has already said that he expects Hurts to be the starter in week 15. Joe Burrow dislocated his pinky finger on his throwing hand, struggled at times in the final series of the first half, and then throughout the second half. Overall looked okay. Probably going to have some more swelling and discomfort, but it's got a full week to recover there. He said he's going to play through their injury and should be able to do so. Daniel Jones, dealing with a neck condition, saw some specialists on Monday who confirmed the fact that he's likely to miss multiple weeks. Again, looks doubtful for this week, but the Giants are hopeful that they'll get him back before too much longer. Mike Glennon left last week's game with a concussion in relief of Daniel Jones, and we'll see whether or not either one of those quarterbacks are going to be able to play anytime soon. Glennon at least has a chance to go. Jones will be out. Justin Fields' return from rib injuries, cracked ribs, is probable for this week. The Bears expect to have him back. Taysom Hill is going to play through a tendon injury on his throwing hand on his third finger. That's expected to happen. We'll see how his practice progresses this week, but was able to play through the second half with that injury and is expected to do so again. Tyrod Taylor, dealing with a wrist injury, was partially due to injury, partially because of concerns over his play, taken out of the game last week, and it looks like that's going to be a multiple-week injury. Panthers are going to look at Sam Darnold and whether or not he's progressed far enough along in his ability to throw the ball after a shoulder blade fracture back in Week 8. Questionable at best this week. He could be designated to return off injured reserve. More likely, it's going to take him a couple of weeks to be.
Oh, hey. All right. More than likely going to take a couple of weeks for me to figure out how to properly video edit. And it's time for Sigmund Bloom's list, upgrades, downgrades, waiver wire report available at footballguys.com. Bloom, everyone will notice, so we have to talk about it so they don't notice. Gardner Minshew is our cover boy.
Right.
Gardner Minshew's not on your list. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, Nick Sirianni says Jalen Hurts is the starter as long as he's healthy. He was not quite a game time decision, depending on the sources you trust. But,
and it was trending last week. We talked about in the preview, like, oh, it looks like Hurts is going to play, even though we thought maybe Minshew was going to play. Does Minshew's play? Because this is how it goes. I got some news on Melvin Gordon.
Right.
That's a spoiler for the running back alert. But these type of situations with that type of game usually prompt teams to say, take your time. So will we see the Eagles say, even though Sirianni says that, take your time, Jalen?
No, I don't think so. I don't know. It's possible. It's possible. Cease. The possibility you bring up is that basically that the team is disingenuous. That Nick Sirianni knows that Hurts is healthy enough to play because he was healthy enough to practice, but they were giving Minshew the first team snaps, and I think they just wanted to go forward with that. And it was the Jets, by the way. That's the other thing. It was the Jets. A lot of backup quarterbacks could look like world beaters against the Jets. I still think that there's something to be explored with Jalen Hurts as the quarterback of the future of this team. So I would hope not, but it's certainly possible. Another thing I'll bring up, similar tangencies here. I don't include Taysom Hill, and I'm not sure what's going on with Taysom Hill's finger. Certainly, if we got some definitive news that he wasn't going to have surgery, that it wasn't going to be a problem, then he might be the top waiver wire quarterback. But we're waiting on this right now. And I have no idea. So, as usual, this is a season more than any other that is rewarding perseverance, that's rewarding the work to stay on top of all of these developments as it continues to be a moving target.
A moving target. Do you know how often, Bloom, that coaches in the NFL lie to you?
All the time when their mouths are moving.
Every day. Every day.
That coming.
That's right. Such a walked right into it.
Yeah.
Let's walk right into your list. Tua Tagovailoa, 25 to 50%. Justin Fields, 20 to 40%. Yeah, even Trey Lance creeping up there, 15 to 30%. Even though he's 100% in my heart, Bloom.
Yeah, we will get to see Trey Lance eventually. Schedule becomes a really big deal here. Miami's on bye, but Tua Tagovailoa is the top waiver wire quarterback because they get the Jets, the Saints, and the Titans. And these are games that are all being played either in Miami, New Orleans, or Tennessee. So no cold weather games, nothing like what we saw last night, that game that Gene was referring to. Justin Fields may or may not play this week against Green Bay. I'm not even sure we'd be excited to play him against Green Bay. Week 15 against Minnesota, week 16 against Seattle, week 17 against the Giants. We might be more excited to see him play, let it loose. Will we see Trey Lance loose? It's Kyle Shanahan, so probably not. But what are we waiting for at this point? They're not out of the playoffs yet, so maybe that's part of it. But the other thing is, and again, at any moment, Trey Lance would become a 50+%, like the priority pickup, if we heard that he was becoming the starter. Because get this, schedule, it's everything now, right? I mean, we can narrow this down to just 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Cincinnati this week, okay, and they weren't that impressive against Justin Herbert. Atlanta, Tennessee, and Houston in the playoffs. But then again, that might make Jimmy Garoppolo the starter because Kyle Shanahan says, yeah, we can win with Jimmy Garoppolo, and maybe we can make the playoffs, and maybe we can be a spoiler, even though, once again, they lose in heartbreaking fashion. How did they lose that game? Gerald Everett, how did Seattle win that game? Questions abound from week 14.
Questions abound, and the old saying is, Bloom, those who know don't tell, those who tell don't know. So prepare your Lassie translator, if you will.
Okay.
They've been waiting for this all year. And what better way, this is me hypothesizing, but what better way to do something different in the playoffs than do something different?
Well, see, as an aside, when I was on with Joe Holka yesterday, I love doing my Monday spots with him. I did say that Kyle Shanahan could be lucking his way into this brilliant twist, because if the San Francisco 49ers could sneak into the playoffs and Trey Lance had only put 2, 3, 4 weeks of film up for defenses to study, now you have the drop on the rest of the NFC. Was that his plan all along? No way. It could work out.
I'm not going to say no way. By the way, is that a fan boat on your shirt, Bloom?
Down here in Louisiana, Santa Claus, his fan boat is pulled by alligators.
Alligators, right. Okay, let's move on in your list. It is Ben Roethlisberger, 10 to 20%.
Yeah.
Shouldn't he be with the 1%ers like Jared Goff, Zach Wilson, Jake Fromm, not Jake from State Farm, Jake Fromm. That joke never gets old. Davis Mills, and then there's Trevor Siemian, which leads back into the Taysom Hill thing, which is just should have offered more than a 7th for Teddy.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Why is Ben Roethlisberger higher than 1%, Cease? Well, it appears a long running joke on this show was that Ben Roethlisberger was really the offensive coordinator of the Steelers, right?
Yeah.
But maybe he should be, or maybe they're at their best when he is. Because we had yet another situation, very much like the Indianapolis game last year, that actually revived the Steelers' chances of making the playoffs.
And Bloom, what does Ben do when he gets to run his own thing? He does what Aaron's used to do.
Yeah.
That's what he does.
And you can see how it changed the whole complexion of this offense. Again, Cease, as a Steelers fan, it's painful. The Steelers might be held back more by their coaching. And I don't mean, well, there's 2 different layers to coaching. The Steelers are not held back by their coaching in terms of the way their players are prepared, the way their players buy into the program, et cetera, et cetera. But tactical decisions on a week-to-week, play-to-play basis, the Steelers seem to be held back by their coaching. So why not let Ben Roethlisberger be quarterback / offensive coordinator? And Thursday night, you're going to get a game against the Minnesota Vikings defense that made Jared Goff look like Bobby Lane. There's a Bobby Lane reference for you. I was like, who's a great Lions quarterback? Matthew Stafford. But then Matthew Stafford doesn't look like Matthew Stafford, so that doesn't really work right now.
Right.
You also have Tennessee the following week. So there's some games here that Ben Roethlisberger could make some noise. And hey, as we learned last night during the Manning cast, right? Quarterbacks hate it when they don't get to pass. So if quarterbacks get to be the offensive coordinator, what's a play call? It's a pass. As we run down the rest of these guys, you basically just have Jared Goff against against Denver this week. At Denver, probably not. But I could see in a pinch. And the thing is, it's Coof time, and you never know when you might have to play your number 2 or even number 3 quarterback. There's injuries. Jared Goff could be somebody that saves you in a matchup like the matchup against Arizona, Atlanta. Those are both also games. Remember, Detroit plays inside, so those are indoor games. We're always thinking about weather. Game at Seattle, Week 17. Zach Wilson's interesting. He had a good half. That's something to build on, right? They call his number at the goal line a lot. He had quarterback sneaks twice. I don't know about the wisdom of that. But you're going to.
And they're telling him to throw to Elijah Moore. So thank you.
Well, that's good. Yeah. And they get Miami, Jacksonville, and Tampa in the playoffs. So those are now, sadly for them, the Jacksonville and Tampa games are in New Jersey. If they were actually staying in Florida for December, isn't that what a lot of people from that area do anyway, like the snowbirds? Anyway, and then you have the quarterbacks, 2 quarterback leagues, superflex leagues. Every starter is worth something. From Mills, maybe Simeon. We shall see.
We shall see. Indeed, we shall see Dr. Jene Bramel. Yeah, hey, I might have to use that one again.
Yeah.
We shall see Dr. Jene Bramel as he joins us to talk about, and this will be a while. I edited this audio as long as I did it properly. This is a long list of injured running backs. So buckle your seatbelt, Bloom, make sure nothing's pulling on your machine because you're breaking up a little bit. And let's listen to Dr. Jene Bramel talk about these injured RBs.
Unfortunately, the list of running backs would be shorter this week if we talked about those that weren't injured. I don't think we're going to see Dalvin Cook for another week or two. Certainly with the Vikings playing on Thursday night, you wouldn't expect him to be cleared to return from a shoulder dislocation back in Week 12. Might still be another week or so before he's able to come back. I think the Vikings are hopeful that they'll get him back for Week 15, but certainly looks to be out this week. Alvin Kamara, close to being returning from his MCL sprain last Thursday night. I think the Saints elected to be a little bit cautious and make sure that Kamara was as good a shape as possible without any stiffness or stability issues in that knee. Looks like he's likely to return this week. It's not clear who will be running the ball in San Francisco. Elijah Mitchell was removed from the game briefly on Sunday for an evaluation for a head injury, came back to the game, didn't seem to have too much trouble, and then reported symptoms in the locker room on Monday. It's going to be very hard for him to recover in time to play this week. The concussion protocol is a 5-step process. Sometimes those steps can be done in less than 24 hours. But when a player reports symptoms on Monday, really hard to get even started on the early stages of the concussion protocol until Tuesday into Wednesday. It's just a very difficult turnaround time for that to happen. So you consider Mitchell doubtful to play. Jeff Wilson wasn't able to carry the ball, dealing with some swelling and issues with the chronic knee condition, had his meniscus repaired back in May, has been able to clear for practice, had a couple of setbacks during his rehab, but looked like he was doing well enough and then just hasn't been able to get back on the field just yet. The Niners said that he was day-to-day. They probably won't reevaluate him until the middle of the week, with Mitchell likely down. They might try to get Wilson to play. Right now it looks like JaMychal Hasty and his recovery from his ankle injury may be the primary back in San Francisco right now. Trey Sermon also on injured reserve with an ankle injury. DeAndre Smith aggravated a shoulder sprain back in Week 12, was not able to play, hasn't been able to return to practice yet. These aggravated injuries sometimes take a little bit longer to heal. It could very much be a 3 to 4 week situation. The Lions did not put him on injured reserve, which gives him a chance to play sooner than expected. But again, as we said time and again this year, wouldn't necessarily count on that being a clear sign that he's only going to miss a week or so. So we'll consider Swift doubtful until you see him cleared to return to practice and ultimately for contact. Darrell Henderson was not able to do much through a quad injury last week. Was active, but unsurprisingly, they kind of kept him in an emergency type role. Hopefully he'll be back this week, but it sounds like the Rams are preparing Sony Michel to have another big workload this week. Damian Harris was in and out of the Monday night game with a hamstring strain, not able to finish the game. A tough turnaround from a Monday Night Football game. If there's any concern at all with that hamstring injury, Tuesday into Wednesday, he could miss time, certainly in practice and possibly even in the Week 14 game. Miles Sanders continues to deal with a right ankle injury, aggravated it yet again. Thankfully, both he and Jordan Howard have a bye week to get healthy, and both of them are expected to be back in Week 15. Josh Jacobs dealing with chronic ankle issues in and out of last week's game. Kenyon Drake suffered a fibular fracture in his ankle and probably a high ankle type situation that's going to require surgery. He's going to go on injured reserve and will be done for the year. Jalen Richard, before the game on Sunday, was put on COVID reserve, and these positive tests put players at high risk of missing at least 1 week because it may take as long as 7 to 10 days for them to get negative tests. So unclear what will happen in Las Vegas. Josh Jacobs tends to play through these injuries when he can, so we'll consider him probable to the side of questionable probably, but the other two players are going to have difficulty playing. Drake obviously out for the year. Melvin Gordon unable to play through shoulder and hip injuries, chronic situations for him. We'll see whether or not he's cleared to return. I was concerned about Alex Collins through the weekend. It was not a surprise that he was not able to go. Still think he's probably dealing with a core abdominal muscle issue. Pete Carroll said on Monday that Collins has a good chance to return this week, which I think is a good thing. I think there was some concern, at least on my part, that he might be headed toward surgery and potentially a season-ending situation. So still something to keep an eye on. We'll see how things go there. David Johnson not able to play with a thigh injury. The illness that he suffered last week kept him from practicing as well. So the Texans were really never able to evaluate him. We'll see whether or not he's able to come back. J.D. McKissick dealing with a concussion. In concussion protocol, you'll hope that he's able to come back this week. Hard to tell. Same thing goes with Jerry McNichols, who's not been back yet. Also watching Damian Williams return from a calf injury. The other big news to watch at the running back spot as we look through the injured reserve list is Chase Edmonds, who is eligible to return this week from a Week 9 high ankle sprain. The Cardinals did not say whether or not they expected him to come back or not. We'll know if they designate him to return early this week and actually get him back on the practice field, that they'll be preparing him for the possibility of playing. Blue James Conner playing well. Edmonds needs to be pretty close to full recovery before they're going to bring him back. We've seen them be cautious already with Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins. So unless we get very early news that Edmonds has been designated to return, expect him to be out for another week or so.
Yeah, expect him to be out another week or so. There's Dr. Jene Bramel talking about those injured running backs and J.D. McCussion.
You missed.
I saw you smile that.
And there was a word, skepticable, that Gene made up by accident. I told him about spectacular whenever he did that. That's the Audible, making lexiconical. I'm making up words too. Linguistic, the frontier is the Audible.
Yes, the frontier is Dante Foreman. I don't know. Let's give him his own little section here, Blue.
Sure. Well, just to see if he was dropped. Again, I'm looking at percentage ownership in public leagues. This powers our apps, and if he was dropped for the bye in a roster crunch, I think that he's probably going to be the starter. And he, again, makes sense as the starter because he has the running style that maps closest to Derrick Henry. This team is still in the playoffs right now. They play Jacksonville this week, so that was always a great game for Derrick Henry. It could be a great game for Dante Foreman. And by the way, Dante Foreman, Kene Nwangwu, Achilles tear, no longer a death knell for running backs.
Yeah, and it just takes some time, maybe lots and lots of time. And it's taken some time to wait for Sony Michel as well. You have two 50+% guys, one Dante Foreman, one Sony Michel. So Sony, you get your own spot too.
Yeah, and let's add from last night, Ramondre Stevenson. And Stevenson would be the top out of the three because of that Damian Harris leg injury, the hamstring injury. Now, he's on bye, Stevenson is, and Harris, maybe he could be good for week 15, but we know how these hamstring injuries are for running backs. So you love Ramondre Stevenson. You love what he can do for this team. And you got Sony Michel. Again, just check. Looking at the percentages, there might be some public leagues that he's out there. The other thing is, before this game, one of the Rams beat writers, I want to say maybe Jordan Rodriguez, was saying, Michel was in line for a larger role anyway. I think they like the more no-nonsense downhill style that Michel brings to the table. He was successful against Jacksonville. And this is a team, it's that time of year, you got to get back to the run. How are you going to help out Matthew Stafford? with the running game. Sony Michel can do that. So there are still running backs in that churn if you have anything left in the wallet, if the waiver wire is still open. Stevenson tops the list, but there are others that have promise of opportunity.
How many leagues is the waiver wire still open? We used to do this
I don't
show
know.
only till like week 12, and then we had such a demand from the people.
Yeah.
And we are the people show. So how many? I mean, the leagues that I'm in, actually, I'll take that back. The two main leagues I'm in, one's closed, one's open.
Right, and it depends on if it's a dynasty league, so that alone gives you something, although this is obviously a redraft kind of scope here. The other thing is, and this calls for a Twitter poll, by the way, Cecil. I'll put up one after we finish the show.
Yeah, I'll be sure to check that. No offense.
So it is an interesting question, but I think that another thing we realize, Cecil, is we just like getting together. We like getting together with people in the chat room. It seems like the people in the chat room like getting together with people in the chat room. So why wouldn't we give each other, especially during these times, an excuse to spend time with each other?
That sounds good to me. What sounds good is 10 to 20%, and Bloom, everybody is 10 to 20% on this list, including Kenneth Gainwell, Justin Jackson, Samaje Perine, Boston Scott. So we're talking a couple of Eagles backs there. And yes, even Jeff Wilson at 10 to 20%. So that's it. Spoiler alert for the running backs. But they're all pretty healthy, depending on what you have left for waiver box.
Right. And what this reflects, and by the way, ahead of them slightly is Jordan Howard at 15 to 30%. And I've made the case for Jordan Howard. I don't know if he's going to be healthy enough to play after the bye, but I think if he is, then he might be the starter and the most valuable back going forward, because remember, he replaced Miles Sanders, who got hurt at the end of the Week 13 win over the Jets. Jets still have never beaten the Eagles, 12-0. Howard could be the most valuable back on a run-first team that's trying to sneak into the playoffs. And then a new addition at 12 to 25%, just slightly above. And what does 10 to 20% and all those running backs being together reflect, Cease? I don't know. They all potentially were something, but I don't know. I mean, you can add probably Dontrell Hilliard to that list. So let's touch on these guys. Again, there's the question mark of the backfield for the Eagles who are going into bye. Kenneth Gainwell, the healthiest. Although Boston Scott only had an illness. But there's an argument that Scott, with his fumble, he's maybe a few steps out on the plank. We get into the backup running backs. I'm going to touch on this a little bit more. Hey, by the way, Hasty is above this group because Jeff Wilson's knee flared up and Elijah Mitchell in the concussion protocol. So you could get a Hasty start against Cincinnati this week. But again, it depends. Do you need somebody for this week, or are you looking for potential future value? That's where the Philadelphia guys come in. And I'm highlighting a couple of backups this week, but I'm going to go over a longer list, trying not to take up a lot of our time with a backup running back after backup running back.
Backup running back talk.
Right. There's a reason that I'm highlighting Samaje Perine and Justin Jackson. It's because both Joe Mixon and Austin Eckler got banged up last week. And Austin Eckler last week was talking about how much wear and tear there's been on his body, how he's never had a season where he's absorbed this much. So he himself is telling us that. Then you want to know who the backup is for the Chargers. And see, that's just a wheel we spin. Is it Kelly? Is it Roundtree? Is it Jackson? Jackson's the best of the three talent-wise, but also the most likely to get hurt himself. Let's put Jackson first in line as we wait for press reports to hear about that. Mixon, we know the drill there with Samaje Perine. Some other running backs, I'm just going to throw these guys out there because it's still time, especially in the playoffs if your waiver wire is open, to have those backup running backs on your bench to play keep away from the other teams. Ronald Jones left with an illness. You don't see that very often in the game. It seems like there's a lot more illness, non-Coof illness, affecting player availability this year.
Well, and I know, not to get too deep into the Coof talk, Bloom, or YouTube will strike us down, but I know for my workplace, for the studio, like if you're sick, stay home.
Yeah.
Which has been a policy implemented over the last 2 years, basically. And I think the NFL's kind of taken that on as well. Like, if you're sick, stay home, so you don't spread anything else.
Yeah, and that's good. I mean, if one of the things that comes out of living in a pandemic is that we're all a little more careful, a little more considerate to not get each other sick, then that's a good thing. Darrell Williams, we saw him get involved in the passing game. Again, there's upside there if Edwards-Helaire gets hurt. Amir Abdullah is going to be the passing down back, but we know that the Panthers want to run the ball 30 times a game. Abdullah could be part of that. Kenane Nwangwu, again, backing up Alexander Madison. Khalil Herbert, who's a really good backup. Don't know if we're going to get to see him play much with David Montgomery balling out. Peyton Barber, because Kenyon Drake went down for the year, and Josh Jacobs is another one that gets banged up. But Peyton Barber just had more to offer than if the Raiders could run the ball consistently, then Barber maybe would be higher on this. Devontae Booker behind Saquon Barkley, Latavius Murray, basically behind Devontae Freeman. That's one. See, this fantasy football season has been so crazy that we don't even blink an eye at Devontae Freeman being a very valuable, basically a fantasy running back one down the stretch. Benjamin until Chase Edmonds comes back. Carlos Hyde, because he went to Ohio State, ceased. Jeremy McNichols, because he went to Boise State? No, because maybe he gets the passing game roll back for the Titans. And Mike Boone, and I'm handing it off to you with Mike Boone last.
I was going to add him in if you didn't, Bloom.
Yeah, so go ahead and tell the folks if they should know what's going on with Melvin Gordon and how much should we care about Mike Boone.
Now, first off, Vic Fangio frustrates me.
Every day.
And
Every day.
he usually just kind of fills you full of coach speak.
Every day.
Kind of what he does. But the early buzz is, they may allow Gordon more time based on Javante's play because Mike Boone's good.
Yeah.
I put it on Twitter, shockingly. Yes, when Matthew said this, I almost spit out my coffee. Cecil liked my tweet once. I felt like I hit Powerball. But yeah, I put it on Twitter during the game. Mike Boone was arguably the best player of any position in training camp. Of any position. So yeah, Mike Boone, 1%. Sure.
Yeah.
And they're still in it, and you're dealing with stubborn coaches, you're dealing with old school coaches.
Every day.
You're dealing with coaches that, maybe don't tell all the truth, all these sorts of things, but kind of the behind the scenes early buzz is Gordon may get a little extra time because Javonte was so damn good. So hell yeah, Mike Boone, Bloom.
Yeah, so we're watching this constantly moving target every year. Running backs that even at this juncture of the season seem very unlikely to have fantasy value week 16, week 17. Give it a couple of weeks, and you never know who you're going to start in your fantasy football championship.
That's right. To that, I would say double true. To that, I also say it's time for Dr. Jene Bramel to go over injured wide receivers here in not quite the fantasy playoffs, but in week 14.
Deebo Samuel heads the list at wide receiver. His groin injury is an aggravated strain. The initial reports were 1 to 2 weeks, but these injuries can sometimes take a little bit longer than you'd expect. It's an outside chance he'll be able to return this week if his recovery is going smoothly, but pay attention to his practice participation. If he's not doing much Wednesday into Thursday, this could bleed into another week or so. Adam Thielen suffered a high ankle sprain, was not able to return to the game. Minnesota plays on Thursday night. No chance Thielen's going to play this week, and you'd hope he'd be back for week 15. Keenan Allen was put on the COVID list on Monday. Again, as we've said with player after player, it's difficult turnarounds, vaccinated or not, to be able to get negative tests and no symptoms within a week. So on the doubtful side of questionable for sure for Keenan Allen. T. Higgins was in and out of the game with an ankle sprain. Did not look like a high ankle injury. Did look a little stronger as the second half went on in Cincinnati, but you could expect him to be limited in practice. Hopefully we'll be able to play. Sterling Shepard, Kadarius Toney, Kenny Golladay, all dealing with injuries in New York. Shepard looked like he was close to recovering and returning from a quad strain, and then was listed questionable and ultimately declared out last week. It's not yet clear whether or not he had a little bit of a setback or if he just wasn't quite in condition and ready to go. Kadarius Toney did not practice last week, has an oblique issue on the side of his chest and abdomen in addition to the quad strain. He's week to week. Kenny Golladay tried to return from a rib injury on Sunday and was unable to do so. All of these players are going to be struggling to be healthy for week 14. Allen Robinson and Marquise Goodwin both missed last week's game. Allen Robinson has been out since week 10 with his hamstring strain and still has not practiced, so he's probably still on the week-to-week side of things. Unclear what kind of foot injury Marquise Goodwin has, but was unable to practice last week. He's questionable at best as well. Corey Davis is going to go on injured reserve after having surgery for a core muscle strain that he's been dealing with off and on for a couple of weeks. That's a 4 to 6 week situation with the Jets essentially out of playoff contention. That ends Corey Davis's 2021 season. We'll watch and see whether Cedric Wilson, Anthony Schwartz, and Randall Cobb are able to return from their injuries. Along the injured reserve list, Does not look like Calvin Ridley is in line to come back soon. We hope his behavioral health is improving and he's doing better soon. However, the Titans look like they are going to get Julio Jones back. He's eligible to return, and they've already designated him to return to practice on Monday. That's a good sign that they're preparing him to play. Jones, however, has been dealing with this injury since the preseason, and he's going to have to get through a full week of practice with reasonable conditioning in order to be cleared to play. So although he's been designated to return, it's not a foregone conclusion that he's going to be able to go. Will Fuller dealing with what's now been described as a shattered finger, still likely a week or so from recovering, but Miami was finally clear that he's started to make some progress and at least getting close. We'll see whether or not he can return before the fantasy play.
Before the fantasy playoffs, my editing skills are top-notch, Bloom. Julio Jones' skills are top-notch as well 7 years ago. So let's talk about this. Very rarely do we talk about Julio Jones on the waiver wire show, but 50+% are for a guy that's a wide receiver 3?
Well, with one A.J. Brown on IR, he's a wide receiver 1. And it appears they've given him enough time to heal. So it makes sense. I think that Julio Jones, even for the glimmers he was healthy, it did look like, if you squint, old Julio Jones. So it's there, and the opportunity should be there. And maybe the Adrian Peterson riding in to save the season narrative, that didn't work out. Maybe it's Julio Jones. So hey, why not? I, for one, would love to see Tennessee make the playoffs with a healthy Julio Jones, maybe even a healthy A.J. Brown. And it would just make sense that this team that is a survivor as a player, that they finally figured out to give enough time to get back to 100% or as close as he's going to get. Again, Cecil, you let it in with it. A chance to pick up Julio Jones, even if it's the ghost of Julio Jones, on the waiver wire to have for my fantasy playoff run when he's the number 1 receiver for this team. Also, let's mention, again, it's Jacksonville this week. We'll see if Shaq Griffin is back. It's the Steelers next week. Joe Hayden hasn't been back. It's San Francisco. They just lost their best corner, Emmanuel Mosley. And it's Miami week 17. Okay, they have some pretty good corners there.
They're kind of good in that defensive backfield, but it's worth a discussion. Or worth, Bloom, we haven't brought it up yet. Jock blocking.
Yeah, sure.
Hey, I don't think Julio Jones can play. I think when he's back, he'll get hurt in an instant. But if he's available in my leagues, you know what I'm doing? I'm picking him up and stashing him on the bench.
Yeah.
My team is so good, I can have Julio Jones on my bench.
Right. He can't hurt you on your bench. He can hurt you on another team's roster.
In fantasy football, it's all about just don't hurt me. Yeah. Don't hurt me, Van Jefferson at 25 to 50%, or Russell Gage at 20 to 40%. Just don't hurt me.
What is love? Baby, don't hurt me.
See, I was thinking, please, Hammer, don't hurt him. Yeah.
No more.
Yeah.
Sometimes it hurts so good. Van Jefferson, Odell Beckham's a little banged up. Van Jefferson, long game, the short game. Van Jefferson has arrived. Russell Gage, clearly the number 1 receiver for Atlanta at this point, had a bad fumble, got banged up at the end of the game. But it's Carolina this week, and Atlanta's not exactly got a great running game. At 15 to 30%, we've got some different opportunity here. Tyler Boyd, we know, is good. Will the opportunity be there? It seems like the harder things get for the Bengals and Joe Burrow, the better things get for Tyler Boyd in fantasy. KJ Osborne will take Adam Thielen's place. He had a nice drive, like 3 for 45 and a touchdown on one drive against the Lions. He's going to face that Steelers secondary. And Amon-Ra St. Brown. And, you know, I wore it yesterday. I wore my Lions throwback shirt yesterday, so I didn't get a chance to honor the Lions, honor Amon-Ra St. Brown. There was a real good jam piece that my good friend Uriah Zane Hunt sent me. It took them less than 24 hours to put it out. It was a song. It was like a nice song, like a hip hop song called "We Won a Game." We won a game. I gotta look it up. You gotta find it for the bumper music for one of the shows this week. We won a game.
Okay.
Amon-Ra St. Brown, we won a game. And it's that slot position. We were wondering when this was going to come online. That slot position with Cooper Kupp was really good. We didn't even realize how good it could be with a better quarterback. But even with Jared Goff, it can be pretty good with Amon-Ra St. Brown getting open and winning a game.
Amon-Ra St. Brown, one of my favorite characters from Mark Spector Moon Knight.
Yeah.
That's a nerd thing. Did you get everybody? Oh, Jalen Guyton and Josh Reynolds.
Down at the bottom, Jalen Guyton catching a deep ball. Actually winning a contested catch. How many times have we seen Justin Herbert underthrow a deep ball? But we saw it, and Jalen Guyton still made the big catch there. Going up this week against the Giants. Josh Reynolds reunited, and it feels so good with Jared Goff, the downfield threat there. Again, maybe not with the Detroit passing game, maybe not this week at Denver. We'll see what the weather forecast looks like. But looking ahead, again, they're going to play indoors against Arizona, Atlanta, and then go up to Seattle. So the Arizona-Atlanta games could be good ones for the downfield passing game. And Josh Reynolds.
And Josh Reynolds. How about good ones for your injured tight ends? In week 14, Dr. Jene Bramel joins us once again to go over that position and those injuries. Dr. Jene, what are we looking at?
2 significant injuries among the tight ends to be mindful of. Logan Thomas suffered a knee injury that was originally thought to be an ACL and MCL injury, which would have been a season-ending surgical situation. The MRI on Monday did not show an ACL injury, and there seems to be some hope in Washington that Thomas is going to be able to play before the end of the season. Hard to know whether this is bone bruise, could well be an MCL or other ligament injury there. Probably going to be a 3 to 4 week situation. Washington cannot put Thomas back on injured reserve without losing him for the year, so that is not going to be a signpost for us in any way. Expect Thomas to miss at least a couple of weeks, and this could easily be 3 to 4 weeks or more. No guarantee he's ready to return this year, but at least there's some hope, whereas Sunday night into Monday morning there didn't appear to be any at all. Darren Waller is now being called day-to-day in Las Vegas from the knee issue that he's fighting through and a back condition that had him not practicing at all, not even seen on the practice field last week. So still unclear exactly what's going on. I'm not convinced that this was just an IT band strain only. It's an uncommon injury for football players, and it really shouldn't have been something structural that would have kept him out last week. So whether it was a back condition that's a concern or there's something more going on in that knee remains to be seen. Hopefully we'll see him back to practice and preparing to play before the end of the week. Harrison Bryant suffered a high ankle sprain before the Browns' Week 13 bye. Seems unlikely that he'll be able to go. Hopefully Ricky Seals-Jones will be ready to go with Thomas down with his knee injury. Seals-Jones has been practicing off and on the last couple of weeks and had a full week of limited practice, so hopefully they'll be able to get him back. Adam Shaheen still dealing with a knee injury in Miami. Not a lot to be hopeful for along the injured reserve list at the tight end spot. Blake Jarwin was hopeful to come back from a hip injury when he was eligible to return, which could be this week. He's been on the COVID list since November 26, likely to come off soon, but that might have limited his hip rehab enough to cost him an extra week. We'll see whether or not he's designated to return soon or not. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Dr. Jene. Made it all the way to the end.
Yeah.
I was sweating it out, Bloom. When your drop list at tight ends is longer than your one tight end, Bloom, what does that say about waiver wire tight ends this week?
Yeah, it's not looking good. And I have a list for desperation plays, but the one tight end is Tyler Conklin. You saw him get a lot more opportunity with Adam Thielen out, including a fade in the end zone. It was back Central Michigan, right? Was that his directional Michigan? Was it Central? I'm sorry, sent all the directional Michigan. So we love you all equally. So we'll see. Tyler Conklin's got some wide receiver skills, and he's basically going to have to be a wide receiver for this team. If you need somebody this week, I'm not saying they're worth a pickup unless you just have to put someone in because you're filling in for Dallas Goedert, you're filling in for Mike Gesicki, you're filling in for Hunter Henry, and you just have to pick up someone off the waiver wire, and Conklin's not out there. David Njoku, Austin Hooper, Ricky Seals-Jones, Dr. Jene talked about. A Denver tight end, I guess, why not Albert Ogbonam? Foster Moreau, if he gets another start, although we'll talk about him in a little bit. Brevin Jordan, maybe even James O'Shaughnessy, because, well, you might not get a 0 from these players.
Yeah, maybe not. Bloom, where are your eyes? Let me see your eyes. Look at my heart's all pitter-patter because I made this for all of you. Now, knowing my editing skills today, Bloom, this is probably going to cut off somewhere, but it's about a minute and a half, and I want all of you to enjoy because I said I would do it. So as we go to the next section, which you know and love, I told you I'd do it, so here it is.
All right, I promised you guys I would do this, so let's do this. Grab the dog. Come on, Ellie. And let's go. So here I am, walking up the beautiful hogback here in Roxborough, Colorado. And it's right behind my house. So I'm going to climb up to the top of this mountain. I'm going to do what I told you Told you I would do. Okay. Almost there. Almost to the top. And what do you see this view? Well, I'm here. I made it. Roxborough Golf Course. Arrowhead Golf Course. My house. Anyway, sometimes you just gotta scream it to the heavens. Sometimes you're out of shape and you gotta climb a mountain. But you get in better shape. That's good. Everyone stay safe. Stay healthy out there. And looks like there's a couple of people on the golf course down there. So they're not gonna get this, but you are. So I want everyone to say it with me and scream it to the heavens. Okay? From the edge of the Rocky Mountains to you, wherever you may be. I want you to all say it with me. Cue the Chuck D! And say Frosty.
That's right. And the
Yeah.
whole thing played. Thank
beautiful.
goodness. Thank goodness.
I just like folks have to tune in to watch this. Go back and watch it on YouTube just so you can see the look that Ellie gives you. She's like, Dad, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? I'm
Why are you
scared,
doing
Dad.
this? Yeah. She almost pulled me down that mountain, by the way. It was on what happened to Cecil? Oh, he's in traction. Dog pulled him down the mountain walking back from behind his house. So yeah, that was an adventure, Bloom. Just like Shut 'em Down is an adventure. What's your week 14 Shut 'em Downs?
Yeah, Tyrod Taylor. We'll have to, injuries. Kenyon Drake, Matt Breida with that terrible fumble. Corey Davis, another injury, and Logan Thomas probably out for the year. At least it wasn't an ACL. It sounds like it wasn't an ACL. And Foster Moreau, I just feel betrayed by the Raiders, really. Moreau did have a 34-yard catch, but he just wasn't used. So I was hoping he was going to come through, watch him come through this week against Kansas City. Maybe instead of shutting him down, we should hold on.
See, sometimes you get to introduce it, and sometimes I get to. But either way, kick off those drums. And who are those hold on players?
Yeah, hold on for one more day. Certainly, I'm going to hold on to Jalen Hurts. Again, even after everything that happened, hold him through the bye. I'm going to hold on to James Robinson. Poor James Robinson. Yes, Urban Meyer, maybe it wasn't that smart to play him at the end of the game if it really wasn't any kind of injury issue. Damian Harris, hold him through the bye. Just we'll see. It is the Patriots running game. I'm going to hold on to Christian Kirk. Some of the issue there potentially with the Cardinals was Kyler Murray had trouble with the ball in the cold conditions. So the passing game might not be off of mothballs after all. I'm going to hold on to Adam Thielen. If I had to put a chip on it, I would say he's not going to play again this year. But it's a high ankle sprain. You never know. Maybe he'll be back in 2 or 3 weeks. Thielen also has a little bit of a history of coming back too early from injuries at times. So it may not be the best thing to hear. But with the Vikings season basically on the line every week, he's not going to play this week. We'll see. I'm going to hold on to see what happens there. Darnell Mooney, I'm going to hold on. Hopefully Justin Fields gets back out there. But again, some good matchups coming up. Maybe we'll hold on to Courtland Sutton just because it's this week against the Lions. And I don't know if I'm bold enough to play him, but maybe something gets going there. I'm going to hold on to Antonio Brown because we know that he has the hookup with Tom Brady. He's going to be fully healthy when he gets back. Make sure you hold on to Zach Ertz. Make sure you hold on to Kyle Pitts, even though maybe you were disappointed with what you got from them. And even though he couldn't hold on to the ball, if he's your best tight end or you have him as a choice, Gerald Everett. See, has there ever been a game when a player had 3 turnovers? And I know it doesn't count against him, that drop, the fumble, the ball up into the air. I've never seen 3 turnovers at the goal line before. Usually when you have turnover number 1, you don't get a chance. Turnover number 2 at the goal line, you definitely don't get another chance. So we may never see that again, but it is the Houston Texans this week. So I may hold. Hey, Ryan Griffin scored against the Texans, I think. So hold on for one more day with Gerald Everett.
For one more day. And Bloom, you know it's a good day when Underrated shows up.
Oh,
right? Yes, of course.
He needs to put Vic Fangio in one of his jams, one of his numbers.
Uh,
Featuring Vic Fangio. Every day,
yes.
featuring Vic Fangio.
Yes, that's for sure.
Every day.
That's right. It is the Audible here, everyone. We appreciate y'all for watching, for doing all those YouTube things. The Football Guys shop is open, so make sure to go to footballguys.com and go to that shop and get your Sorry Joe shirt, which we had on launch day, Bloom. I just didn't know. So, yes, the Sorry Joe shirt is there. I didn't have to go out and put it out there and send a bunch of emails. I was just like, spoke it into existence, right? So thanks to everyone behind the scenes. We do have a Sorry Joe shirt. And again, it's going to be one of those, you want that, speaking of underrated, you want that underrated band t-shirt, right? That only the fans of the band will know. That's Sorry Joe. That's Sorry Joe in a nutshell. That's Sorry Joe. So there we go. We appreciate each and every one of you for doing those YouTube things. Like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you never miss a vid. He's Sigmund Bloom. You follow him on Twitter at Sigmund Bloom. The show is at the Audible, and I'm at Cecil Lammey saying thanks. Stay tuned. And as always, stay frosty.